Good day, everyone. Today, we will do a question and answer of Gross Anatomy Board Review series, specifically on the topic of the upper extremity. I have collected three editions here of BRS Gross Anatomy, and I randomly selected high yield questions on the upper extremity. We will discuss each question and present the answer correspondingly. Question 1. A 21-year-old patient has a lesion of the upper trunk of the brachial plexus, an Herb Duchenne paralysis. Which of the following is the most likely diagnosis? A. Paralysis of the rhomboid major. B. Inability to elevate the arm above the horizontal. C. Arm tending to lie in medial rotation. D. Loss of sensation on the medial side of the arm. Or E. Inability to adduct the thumb. The correct answer is C. Arm tending to lie in medial rotation because a lesion of the upper trunk of the brachial plexus results in a condition called Waiter's tip deformity. Waiter's tip deformity, in which the arm tends to lie in medial rotation because of paralysis of the lateral rotators and abductors of that arm. Question 2. A patient comes in with a gunshot wound and requires surgery in which the thoracoacromial trunk needs to be ligated. Which of the following arterial branches would maintain normal blood flow? A. Acromial. B. Pectoral. C. Clavicular. D. Deltoid. Or E. Superior thoracic. Therefore, this question is asking us which of the following arteries is not a branch of the thoracoacromial trunk. And the correct answer is E, superior thoracic artery. This is because the first four choices, the acromial, pectoral, clavicular, and the deltoid arteries are all branches of the thoracoacromial trunk. The superior thoracic artery is not a branch of the thoracoacromial trunk, but rather is a branch of the axillary artery. Question 3. A 27-year-old patient presents with an inability to draw the scapula or the shoulder blade forward and downward because of paralysis of the pectoralis minor. Which of the following would most likely be a cause of his condition? A. Fracture of the clavicle. B. Injury to the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. C. Fracture of the coracoid process. D. Axillary nerve injury. Or E. Defects in the posterior wall of the axilla. And the answer is C. Fracture of the coracoid process. This is because the pectoralis minor inserts on the coracoid process. It originates from the second to the fifth ribs and is innervated by the medial and lateral pectoral nerves that arise from the medial and lateral cords of the brachial plexus. The pectoralis minor is responsible for depressing the shoulder and forming the anterior wall of the axilla. Question 4. A 16-year-old boy fell from a motorcycle and his radial nerve was severely damaged because of a fracture of the midshaft of the humerus. Which of the following conditions would most likely result from this accident? A. Loss of wrist extension leading to wrist drop. B. Weakness in pronating the forearm. C. Sensory loss over the ventral aspect of the base of the thumb. D. Inability to oppose the thumb. Or E. Inability to abduct the fingers. And the correct answer is A, because injury to the radial nerve results in loss of wrist extension, which in turn would lead to wrist drop. Question number 5. A 21-year-old woman walks in with a shoulder and arm injury after falling during horseback riding. Examination indicates that she cannot adduct her arm because of paralysis of which of the following muscles? A. Teres minor, B. Supraspinatus, C. Latissimus dorsi, D. Infraspinatus, or E. Serratus anterior. And the correct answer here is C. Latissimus dorsi, which adducts the arm. Let us recall the functions of the other muscle choices here. The supraspinatus is responsible for abducting the arm, that is pulling the arm away. The infraspinatus and the teres minor rotate the arm laterally, whereas the serratus anterior rotates the glenoid cavity of the scapula upward. It also abducts the arm and elevates it above a horizontal position. Question number 6. A 35-year-old man walks in with a stab wound to the most medial side of the proximal portion of the cubital fossa. Which of the following structures would most likely be damaged? A. Biceps brachii tendon, B. Radial nerve, C. Brachial artery, D. Radial recurrent artery, or E. Median nerve. And the correct answer is E. The median nerve. The contents of the cubital fossa from medial to lateral are as follows. Most medial is the median nerve, followed by the brachial artery, then the biceps brachii tendon, and lastly, the most lateral, the radial nerve. Therefore, the median nerve is damaged since it is the structure that is the most medial. Question 7. A man injures his wrist on broken glass. Which of the following structures entering the palm, superficial to the flexor retinaculum, may be damaged? A. Ulnar nerve and median nerve. B. Median nerve and flexor digitorum profundus. C. Median nerve and flexor pollicis longus. D. Ulnar artery and ulnar nerve. Or E. Ulnar nerve and flexor digitorum superficialis. And the correct answer is D. The ulnar artery and the ulnar nerve are structures which are superficial to the flexor retinaculum. To recall, structures entering the palm above or superficial the flexor retinaculum, aside from the ulnar artery and ulnar nerve, also include the palmaris longus tendon and the palmar cutaneous branch of the median nerve. Palmar cutaneous branch. The median nerve, the flexor pollicis longus, and the flexor digitorum superficialis and profundus all run deep to the flexor retinaculum. Question 8. A 31-year-old roofer walks in with tenosynovitis resulting from a deep penetrated wound in the palm by a big nail. Examination indicates that he has an infection in the ulnar bursa. This infection most likely resulted in necrosis of which of the following tendons? A. Tendon of the flexor carpi ulnaris. B. Tendon of the flexor pollicis longus. C. Tendon of the flexor digitorum profundus. E. Tendon of the flexor carpi radialis. Or E. Tendon of the palmaris longus. So this question is basically asking which of the following choices is in the ulnar bursa. And the correct answer therefore is C, the tendon of the flexor digitorum profundus, because the ulnar bursa, also known as the common synovial flexor sheath, contains the tendon of the flexor digitorum profundus, as well as the tendon of the flexor digitorum superficialis. Question 9. A 29-year-old patient comes in. He cannot flex the distal interphalangeal joint of his index finger. His physician determines that he has nerve damage from a supracondylar fracture. Which of the following conditions is also a symptom of this nerve damage? A. Inability to flex the DIP joint of the ring finger. B. Atrophy of the hypothenar eminence. C. Loss of sensation over the distal part of the second digit. D. Paralysis of all the thumb muscles. Or E. Loss of supination. And the correct answer is C. Loss of sensation over the distal part of the second digit. This is because the flexor digitorum profundus muscle flexes the DIP joints of the index and the middle fingers. It is innervated by the median nerve, which also supplies sensation over the distal part of the second digit. The same muscle flexes the DIP joints of the ring and little fingers, but it receives innervation from the ulnar nerve. And finally, our last question. The victim of an automobile accident has a destructive injury of the proximal row of carpal bones. Which of the following bones is most likely damaged? A. Capitate. B. Hamate. C. Trapezium. D. Triceptrum. Or E. Trapezoid. This question is essentially asking which of the following choices is part of the proximal carpal bones. And the correct answer, therefore, is D, the triquetrum. We recall that we have a useful mnemonic to remember the proximal and the distal set of carpal bones, which is some lovers try positions. This is the proximal row that they can't handle. This is the distal row. Parts of the proximal row therefore are the scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, and pisiform, and parts of the distal carpal bones are the trapezium, the trapezoid, the capitate, and the hamate. Some lovers try positions that they can't handle.